just a conversation with a fellow clown. It's not very serious, we're clowning around. It's really just a clown-versation. Hello everybody, welcome to another Clown-versation. I am Barnaby King from Clown Spirit, and I'm here today to talk to two more wonderful performers from the CoHo Clown Festival. I'm going to be talking to Nick from the Nancy Boys, Nick CONDON from the Nancy Boys, and also to Jordan Kriston, who is going to be performing in Jouissance this weekend. They're both performing this weekend in the CoHo Clown Festival, which is super exciting because we have a clown festival in Portland, everybody. And so Portland is going to become the new place for the clowns to move to. But today we have, interestingly, both artists I'm going to be talking to don't necessarily come from a clowning background. So I'm super interested in this because they've been programmed and selected as part of a clown festival. But Nick and the Nancy Boys come more from an improv background, and Jordan comes more from a dance background. So we're going to be talking a little bit about these kind of disciplinary intersections, right? What does clown kind of slip into, and what slips into clown, and what is the importance of these kind of categorizations anyway? So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome my amazing guests today. So hello and welcome to the Clown-versation, Jordan and Nick.
Hello.
Hey there. Hey guys.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being with me today on this Clown-versation. It's so awesome to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's so cool. So guys, before we get any further, let's just kind of highlight the actual shows and talk about the times and the places and what you're going to be performing. So Jordan, your show, tell us about it. Jouissance, right?
Yes, Jouissance. And I actually was inspired to get that name. It means joy or ecstasy or physical or mental pleasure, just by researching the word joy, because I understand, I heard from the festival, that's what this is about, is bringing joy to the people of Portland. And since I didn't know so much about clowning, I was like, well, let me think about joy, like what brings me joy. And I just thought that was such a beautiful word. And, you know, it's intriguing because not everyone knows what it means. I didn't know what it meant. And so that was the spark of...
Everyone's like, am I pronouncing it right? Jouissance.
Jouissance.
It creates some kind of conversation, you know, already around am I saying it right? There's kind of exotic quality to it, which is great.
Yeah, I had to listen to it on Google a couple times because I had never used that word before. But my piece is the duet. It's myself and a friend of mine, Shanice Crockett. She's also a wonderful performer. And it is about joy, but it's also about emotions and kind of the fleeting nature of them. Like, as much as I want to hold on to joy, it doesn't always last. And as much as sometimes we can feel down in the dumps, that also doesn't last. And so although my intention at first was to just make a piece about joy, what ended up coming out of that was a more realistic version to me of how those emotions come and go. So I would describe it as a dance theater piece. There's a lot of dance stuff that we pull out from our training, but I've also had a lot of like extra work in theater, aside from just doing dance. So it's really a dance theater piece. And I kind of am starting to, I'm understanding that clown is also a lot about theater and character. And so that's where I feel like part of the intersection happens.
Super interesting. So in a minute, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, about why the intersection of dance and clown. But the show, so is the show sort of brand new in that sense? Like you've made it for the festival?
I made it for the festival, yes. Inspired by the festival, actually.
Wow, that's so cool. That's amazing. It's like a commission, a festival commission.
Yeah.
So, and how long is it roughly?
30 minutes.
Okay. And it's going to be this weekend, Friday night and Saturday night. Give me the time.
So Friday night, Saturday night at 7 p.m. it starts.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no intermission. It just goes straight through, and it's about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more, but yeah.
Yeah. Especially if the audience gets riotous and, you know, you need to calm them down a little bit. It might take longer.
We'll see.
And you can come and see it as what do you call it? Like a double bill, right? With the Nancy Boys. So Nick, welcome, and tell us a little bit about the Nancy Boys show, which is going to be both nights as well, right after Jordan's show.
Yeah, Nancy Boys, we're at 9 o'clock on Friday and Saturday. And the Nancy Boys started because my partner and I, Justin, my spouse, we used to tour and do traveling children's theater together and traveled all around the country. And when we moved to Portland, we realized we didn't have as much time together, for one, because when you're on the road traveling with literally just one other person, see them all the time. But when we moved here, we did not see each other as much. We still wanted to play together. And we started developing, like, what kind of show can we do together? What we can do. So we talked about what we liked, and we both loved mystery and narrative and improv. And so we talked about, well, maybe we can do like an improvised mystery. What we like. So I grew up reading the Hardy Boys mysteries. They grew up reading Nancy Drew, as it turns out. And then as we started playing with it, we realized, like, oh my God, we can be the Nancy Boys.
That's brilliant.
Which is ridiculous. So it's a very kind of queer, campy mystery narrative. Between the two of us, we stumble upon a mystery, find the clues, and solve it. And we play every single character needed to do so. So sometimes between the two of us, we're up to 12 characters in one, like, roughly 45-minute show. Sometimes we're playing 6 characters in the same scene and sharing all those roles and bouncing back and forth all over the stage to continue the story and solve the mystery as needed.
And so the mystery, do you decide that in advance, or is that kind of completely made up with the audience's help?
Yeah, it's completely made up. So we usually get 2 or 3 suggestions from the audience at the top, usually some type of object or a mysterious location, or pose some kind of question. And then after that, I'll announce the title of the mystery. In one of our more adult shows, I will say that we played at a queer comedy festival. We were given dildo as a suggestion. And that evening, the Nancy Boys solved the case of the flaccid phallus. And we announced the title at the top. And then based on that title and the other suggestions, we just see what happens and unfolds and follow the clues.
I love it. So it's gonna be a riot. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And there is, I'm just gonna bring up the website here so people can see the details. This is at 9 o'clock on the 30th and the 1st of October. So if you're in Portland, come on down. And this is Jouissance, which you can see is the same nights, both nights at 7 o'clock. And Nick, there is also you have a sort of a warm-up act, right?
We do. Famke Romstead, How to F is her show. It is also a little more adult. The Nancy Boys often can play very family-friendly venues because a lot of, like, what we do is very innuendo and stuff that would be lost on younger ones or go right over their head. This show is not that way at all.
Good to know.
Was very fortunate to meet Famke at a festival in Salt Lake City where the Nancy Boys have performed. I also brought my one-man show. I do a improvised solo musical called Solitaire, and was able to connect with Famke down there just a couple months ago. And when we knew this was happening, we invited her. So very much clown, just strong character work, strong physicality.
Yeah.
And just so much fun.
I love the idea of this sex in ours. I'm very curious to see how that plays out in reality.
Yeah, it's just like our show. It's entirely different every time, but it's brilliant and she's super fun.
Yeah, wonderful. So there's some amazing theatre opportunities this weekend if you're in Portland. So Thanks for that, guys, for giving us the kind of like the summary of your show. I wanted to talk now a little bit more about you guys as artists and your background, which we've touched on already. Jordan, you know, you come from a dance background. At what point did you realize that it was viable for you to be in a clown festival? Like, what, you know, how is that? Do you think of yourself as in any way clowning?
Well, the dance company that I danced for a really long time was very heavy on the theater. And so I learned about dance theater through working with them. And I was with this particular company for like 8 years. And even in the dance world, that specific dance company, people would question, is this even dance or is it theater? And it was kind of in that middle ground. And so I felt like I already had like a little bit of that woven into myself as an artist. But the way I got it, what's that?
What company was that, Jordan?
Pilobolus Dance Theater. They're based out of Connecticut. Yeah. So so I was with them for a long time. And I did a dance theater piece with a choreographer in town. His name is Graham Cole. And I performed for him, and people from CoHo came and saw the show, and they loved his work and they loved the character I played in that work. And I guess because it was so theatrical, like the person I played in that show, it was such a defined character having a very specific experience, and they invited him to present that show. But when it came down to it, he's a very busy person. And so he suggested me to CoHo. And so I think I really just trust Graham's judgment. If he thinks that the work that I do is clown, like fits in the world of clown, then I trust what he says. And then when I started talking to people from CoHo and actually reading your website about clown, I realized this is what I've worked on in dance. I just didn't use the word clown, but to like develop a character, to be honest, to be able to like really say what the truth is. Only instead of doing that behind the veil of clown, or not veil, but like that was my aim in dance. I just never knew that like that was also a goal of clown, is to be honest, to tell the truth, to kind of get away with saying what is really happening. And so I just took it as like a really great opportunity that came into my world for a reason, and I didn't question it too much.
That's awesome. Yeah, because you say in your quote, I think on your website, I strive to use dance as a way of building connection, breaking down social barriers, and not only considering but appreciating other people's perspectives. My work lies in the basics of humanity, eye contact, meaningful interactions, and physical expression. And for me, you know, this idea of breaking down social barriers is very clown. This idea of eye contact, of being very direct and connected, you know, on a kind of heart level with the audience. And what you said about speaking from your truth with this kind of vulnerability and honesty, these are all kind of hallmarks of this broader understanding of what clown is. And certainly in my work and, you know, my organization, Clown Spirit, that's the kind of clowning that I'm really interested in promoting and teaching people about, is this much broader understanding of clown that doesn't have to be about a particular way of looking, you know, or acting, or even being funny necessarily. It's really about being very connected with your heart, with your truth, and learning how to be playful with that and have fun with that in live context with an audience.
Yeah. The guy who I talked to from CoHo that called what I did in Graham's performance clown blew me away, because this character was not very funny. Like, she was undergoing extreme anxiety, duress, isolation. She you know, it wasn't my like idea of what I thought clowning was. And that's why I'm just like, I think it's really exciting to start to learn about an art form that is so much broader than I thought.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, it was really cool. And I'm actually excited to learn more about clown because now I realize I have so much more in common with something that I didn't realize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You could go take some clown workshops and find out what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
But also what's great is that because you're in this festival, it's going to open up people's minds about what clowning is as well. You know, which is
Mm-hmm.
such a great programming move from the festival, I think. Because hopefully you'll bring with you some audience who are more of a dance audience, or people just come along because maybe they've seen a poster or something that looks like a dance show, and then they kind of get exposed to this idea that it's that clown isn't just that, you know, red nose funny ha thing that we associate, that, you know, that actually clowning can be embedded or connected to dance. So you're
Mm-hmm.
doing a great job. You're educating people as well as performing.
Thank you. It's going both ways.
Yeah, which is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick, let's could we talk a little bit about your I don't know, your experience of clown? Do you have any background in clown, or is it mostly from a theater and improv background?
It's mostly from a theater and improv background. I have taken some clown workshops in the past at various festivals throughout the years. And, you know, I grew up in Minneapolis, where Theater de la Jeune Lune was, and some brilliant folks there, and was able to take a workshop from them, and had some connections through like Carrie Margolis and things like that. But that was like a long time ago. So I never really, you know, I think kind of like Jordan, never thought of myself as a clown, but like as an improviser, it's a very physical art form as well. Right. And we, one of the phrases that, you know, in improv is truth in comedy, right? Just play the truth of the scene, play the truth of your character. So we're very much like looking to be honest and communicate with our scene partner or with the audience, as the case may be. So there's a lot of clown elements that I think relate to improv. And then more recently, over the past few years here in Portland, working for Oregon Children's Theater, I was able to work with Jeff and Emily, who are both clowns and are involved with CoHo, with some of the weekly clown drop-ins that y'all do, or that they do, and have been having a blast like going to those when I can, because it's just, I really love the idea of artists learning from each other. And Emily High Kicks Newton and I started doing like a little mini collab where I would show her some improv stuff, she'd show me some clown stuff, and we'd kind of just hang out in her basement and like, all right, you teach me a thing, now I'll teach you a thing, and we just kind of learn and play together, which has been a blast.
Do you teach kids improv? I
teach kids of all ages improv, from like 3.5 to 93. So improv is what I do for my main living, and it's my passion, and I teach all forms of improv, scenic improv, musical improv. Actually, in a couple weeks, and at CoHo, I'm co-teaching a workshop with Laura Hall, who is improv famous. Not a lot of people might know her name, but she is the music director of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, wow.
So she has played, she's been the music director and played every single US show of Whose Line Is It Anyway? And she's one of the most amazingly talented and yet somehow very humble music directors I've ever worked with in my life.
Nice. That's beautiful. Do you, Nick, do you know Brian Sutherland?
Not super well, but I'm familiar.
He's a guy, he's an actor who does a lot of improv workshops, I know, in Portland, who's also kind of very into clowning. And he did one of my clown workshops online about a year ago. And I'm not saying it's anything to do with me, but since then he's like got so much work in TV and film. He's just like jetting all around the world now. It's crazy.
Wow.
He's in all these you know, TV shows and commercials, and you know, and he says that the clowning not just with me, I have to admit, he's done clowning with other people as well, that for him, that the clown gives him this quality as an actor. I think one thing he describes is that in auditions, he just feels kind of fearless, you know, like he can just do anything and make a complete idiot of himself. He doesn't care. And he learned that through clowning. And it means that maybe some auditions he doesn't get because he's not right. But, you know, because he's kind of fearless, he will do anything. And people love that. And, it, you know, I think it's got him a lot of work.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's how I always want to feel in auditions.
Right?
That's like, yeah, that just, I can see how that, like, not taking oneself too seriously would be like the perfect medicine at an audition.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that's just like another example of the crossovers there between, you know, clowning and other art forms.
You know, I think one of the, you know, improv and clown both have the idea that they're both focused on play, right?
Yeah.
Is how can we play and be free to play ourselves and play with whoever we're in a scene with. And in clown, which tends to be more solo work, you're in a scene with the audience, right? And they're there with you. And there's this idea that when you agree to play with someone, you immediately become friends. You know, I think of like 2 6-year-olds on a playground. And one like walks up to the other and be like, "Do you want to play?" And the answer inevitably is always yes, right? So how can we bring that spirit of play to like everything we do? And that's very much an improv mindset as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And my clown teacher, my first ever clown teacher, Sue Morrison, she always said, you know, improv is a great workout for clowns. And part of it is that yes and kind of attitude, you know, the acceptance of all offers. Just go with it, you know. And what you said about loving and accepting your partner on stage, you know, whatever they're doing, you're there to make them look better.
Well, and everything is an offer too, right? So like, you know, that's one thing that's important for a Nancy Boy show, because we have sometimes even shorter, but for shows when we were billing our own show, you know, it's 45 minutes to stumble upon a mystery, find the clues and solve it. In order to do that, like everything needs to be important. Every offer needs to be valued and recognized and needs to lead us to somewhere else. And the same is true with clown. I think when you're engaging with an audience member, you know, just that brief moment of eye contact and how that audience member reacts is an offer, right? Whatever they give you, whether it's a smile or an uncomfortable turning away, like it's still an offer and it needs to be recognized.
One big aspect of clowning for me is to do with risk and failure. And I'm wondering, for each of you, how does risk and failure come into your work? Like, is there risk of failure in your work, Jordan?
Yeah. Well, okay. So when I wrote eye contact on my website, I meant with each other on stage. And I'm just learning about with clowns, it's with the audience more. And so I actually don't have a ton of experience with making direct eye contact with people in the audience. But what has fascinated me in the past was like, often we would begin our improvisations, because we actually would make dances through improvisation first. Our directors would have us look at each other and through that eye contact, like follow the impulses that came up from that. And so the movement was secondary to the eye contact and the, you know, theatrical impulses or feelings between the performers. And but the risk I feel like I'm experimenting with in this piece is like my dance partner and I have been talking about, like, what are the moments where we can involve the audience? What are the moments where like we can look at them, or would it make sense? Because for me, it feels a little bit unfamiliar. I'm more used to setting a scene where like, okay, the audience can observe this moment in time that's happening as if they're like not like creepily watching through a window, but you know, like observing it in a dream or whatever. And so I've been taking the risk of like, all right, how can you know, how can we involve the audience a little bit And then also being funny as a dancer has always intimidated me. I think it's like easier in this art form to fall back on like serious and poetic and really deep emotions or something.
Yeah.
And so being funny has been more intimidating to me. But the reality is like when I'm with people I'm comfortable with, I can be a really goofy person. And I've always had this fantasy, like, wouldn't it be funny if like on stage someone did this, like the most ridiculous thing or the most like absurd thing or like really bad dancing or really bad costumes or something. But probably clown has done this all the time, but I've always wanted to see it in a dance performance because sometimes I'm like, just want something ridiculous to happen. So there is a section in my piece where we are playing with that a lot, and it's new to me, it's out of my comfort zone, but I really felt like I was given permission in this context to like kind of bridge that fantasy in my work that I've never had the courage to do.
I forgot to mention this, but earlier. But if anyone wants to write to throw in a question in the comments to Jordan or Nick, please do that. We'll have another few minutes of talking here, and then we'll be done. So, please, if you have a question and you're watching right now, do throw it into the comments. Also, just let us know you're there. It'd be great to know who you are. So that sounds very cool, Jordan, and I'm really excited to see it on Friday. I'm not sure which night, but I'm excited to see these moments that you're experimenting with and playing with in a new way. And how cool that, because you're in a clown festival, you've been given a little bit more permission to do that. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
And for sure it'll be interesting to see how the potential to connect eye contact with the audience, how it affects the moment, right? Whether that kind of changes anything about the performance. I'm
really eager to see how it feels on stage, like dancing for each other, dancing alone in a studio is one thing, but like once you get it in front of people, I feel like that's when the magic happens. And a lot of times, like, I feel motivated to do stuff that I maybe didn't do in rehearsal because I just get so excited. I'm like, oh, people are here. And it's just a different energy you can't manufacture when no one's in the room. So I'm excited for that too.
And Nick, what about failure and risk? I think it's pretty evident with improv, but risk all the time.
Yeah, a couple things on that. I love the word failure because the word fail is my favorite acronym, which stands for first attempt in learning.
I love it.
So as much as when I'm teaching and performing, like if we're gonna fail, like fail hard, fail bold. Because each time we fail, we learn and grow from that failure.
That's great. I never heard that. First attempt in learning.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down right now.
I love it so much. I stumbled upon it when I was doing some in-school programming, and I saw it in an art classroom. And they just had the word fail with the words, first attempt in learning across the other way as an acronym. I'm like, that is brilliant. And I've used it ever since. And then the other thing that's, I think, is great about improv is like, there are no real mistakes as long as we acknowledge what happened, right? So very much like a Bob Ross painting, there's no mistakes, only happy accidents, right? So when a mistake happens, we acknowledge it and we're like, yes, that is now part of our story. I don't know how, but we're going to make it work. And somehow you do. And as long as we don't ignore those mistakes, they're not really mistakes. They're only happy accidents. So.
Yes. Fabulous. Yes. Well, that I mean, what you just said could have been straight out of a clown, methodology workbook.
That's awesome, and I love that. I've realized that the more I've been doing improv improv for over two decades now, but whenever I cross paths with a clown, there's always some like correlation, and I say something and they're like, oh yes, that's a very clown thing, or they'll say something, I'm like, that's a very improv thing. So
yeah. So it makes me wonder sometimes whether we need these categorizations and these kind of silos of like, this is improv, this is clown, this is dance, you know, and whether sometimes we're all really doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Is that a provocative thing to say? Is that a controversial thing to say? What do you guys think?
I had that exact thought. Like, again, when I read on your website, what is clown? And then I saw all this stuff about just, you know, trying to bring the truth to light. And then when I saw like the workshops that you provide, you know, this can benefit the workplace, this can benefit someone in their confidence, this can benefit someone in their personal growth. I feel like I could write the same thing about dance, you know, and about like what happens when we learn to improvise and move the body and like speak with our bodies, and like what is it to have an honest movement versus like, you know, something that feels manufactured and having to fail over and over again in a movement before a dance is created. Like that's so much part of our process too, is like, you know, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this works, and then going through that cycle. And so I don't know, maybe just the emphasis is different. I'm sure it comes from different cultures that or origins, I guess I should say. But I had that same exact thought. I was like, I literally could put like dance right here and describe all the benefits. But I guess what the only difference maybe was the emphasis on humor. But I think that's an inherent truth in being authentic. Like humor breaks down the seriousness of being one's authentic self. And so I really like that. Like I kind of want to learn more about that in clowning, because in my art form that I feel most familiar with, I feel like it's like, yeah, what is the truth? But I haven't experimented a ton with using humor to get there.
Yeah.
So
got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Great.
my thoughts.
Great answer. Thank you. Nick, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the art forms are like very super closely related. I think, you know, the thing that they have in common is they're all about communication, right? It's all about like, how do we communicate some type of emotion to the audience? And, you know, with dance and, you know, clown as well, there seems to be like, I know I'm going to do this. I know this is the idea that's going to be communicated to the audience. And with improv, we're mostly discovering at the same time as the audience. So very similar principles, very physical art form, very emotional art form. But oftentimes, even when I do like a solo show, I have no idea what's going to happen until the show starts.
Yeah.
And literally, you know, there was one show where a character had a reaction, and I heard someone from the audience shout out, "What?" Like they were kind of outraged at what happened in the scene. And I broke character for a second to say, like, I'm just as surprised as you are. And then like went back into the scene. But still, again, very emotional art form, very physical art form. And it's all about communication, right? And how do we tell the truth through our own personal art form?
Yes. I suppose in a way it's a bit like if you use the analogy of food, you know, there's some things that all food has in common, and we want to make dishes and meals that are, you know, flavorful and full of variety and all these things. But it's also good that things have different tastes that complement one another. And, you know, so it is possible to use these labels of art forms in that way. Like, oh, it's dance, but there's this kind of spoonful of clowning that we add in here and a sprinkle of improv here. And, you know, by being able to name those things, it helps us in the crafting process of what is it we're doing and what are the tools at our disposal, even though for the audience maybe it doesn't really matter.
I love that analogy, because I think like as artists, you know, of all these different art forms, like how can we like help expand the palette of our audience, you know? Like maybe some people like, you know, I like, you know, Italian food, but I don't really like, Thai food as much. And you're like, well, there's this Thai basil that's really flavorful in this dish. And maybe, like you like these elements of these spices taste really good. Maybe just try a little bite of this. And
but not so different as you thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's and spiciness, right? Like spiciness and heat is sort of a thing across many cultures and foods, but it's sort of subtly different in different places. And I think it's the same, right? Because there are some common principles with the performing arts, but there's also these subtle shades of difference that keep it interesting. So everything's not just the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think they're all nourishing too. Like when I think of food, I think of nourishment, and like sometimes I want a fresh salad with only vegetables, and but then sometimes I want comfort food and I want meatloaf and potatoes, and or it's like Mexican food, spicy food, Thai food. So, and I really do want those different things, but they all feel nourishing for me. They all, just like in art form, like like with improvisation, maybe I need that element of surprise, or like maybe I need to laugh and forget my problems for half an hour and realize like the world is going to go on turning, even if it doesn't feel like that to me. Or like maybe I do need to see something serious so I can relate to feeling my emotions, and maybe some heavy emotions. And so I like that they are I like that they have so much in common and that they're nourishing, but I also think it is important that they are defined a little bit differently now that we're talking about it, because their magic is like, it's almost like they're experts in like certain ingredients that kind of fuel life.
Yes.
Or what they give to the audience.
Yes. Very cool. I am excited to have some conversations with you guys after seeing your shows as well, because it'll be interesting to compare this, talk about the actual shows and where the clowning was present. So I hope that you guys stick around after the shows and chat with the audience, because I would love to have conversations with you.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys. This has been such an interesting conversation, and so generous of you to give up your time when you're kind of, in the week leading up to the festival as well, and you're super busy. So thank you, and have an awesome shows on Friday and Saturday, and we'll see you there.
Yeah.
Awesome. See you there.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm excited to see your show, Nick, too. I'm going to stay and watch. Like, I'm really pumped about it. So, yeah. Looking forward to meeting you both in person.
Yeah. Okay.
Likewise.
Bye, Jordan. Bye, Nick. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching and tuning in to another Clown-versation. And thank you to Nick and Jordan for that cool, interesting conversation. Next week, I'm going to be talking to another couple of performers from the festival, Rudy Galindo and also Lisa, who he performs with, who are together, Teatro Pachuco. They're going to be performing the following weekend, the last weekend of the Clown Festival, and I'll be interviewing them next week. So look out for that. Also, this Friday, my regular Clown-versation slot, I'm talking to Ricardo Puccetti from Brazil, from the incredible Lume Teatro, which are one of the, I think, most brilliant theatre companies in the world. And Ricardo is a great clown and a really important artist in this art form. So join me on Friday. Check out all the courses and stuff. If you want to be part of this clown community that I am building, and we are building together, you can check out my Facebook group, which is called The Way of the Clown, and my website, which is clown-spirit.com, and these Clown-versations on my YouTube channel. And let's just keep clowning, guys. Thank you so much. See you again soon.